Welcome back to the channel, everyone. And if this is your first time here, you're in exactly the right place because today we're diving into one of the most unbelievable stories in modern coin collecting, a story that proves that even the most ordinary-looking penny in your pocket could secretly be a life-changing treasure. And this time our focus is on the 1979 mint-marked D1 USA coin. A penny that millions of people have handled, spent, ignored, and even thrown away, yet under extremely rare circumstances and because of specific minting errors and mistakes, this humble copper coin has been linked to valuations rumored as high as $19 million, making it one of the most talked about and controversial pennies among collectors, error hunters, and numismatic experts worldwide. So settle in and listen closely because the details matter, and one tiny difference can mean the gap between a 1-cent coin and generational wealth. The 1979 D Lincoln cent was struck at the Denver Mint during a time when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of pennies to meet circulation demand, and high-speed production environments like this are exactly where extraordinary errors are born, because when millions of planchets are moving rapidly through presses, even a microscopic misalignment, metal flaw, or die defect can slip through unnoticed, creating coins that are never supposed to exist. And while the vast majority of 1979 D pennies are worth only face value or a small premium in high-grade condition, a tiny handful display catastrophic minting mistakes so extreme that they defy normal classification, and these are the coins that collectors dream about finding. One of the most important factors that can push a 1979 D penny into the multimillion-dollar realm is the presence of a dramatic doubled die error, particularly a doubled die obverse where the inscriptions, date, and even Lincoln's profile show strong, clear doubling that is not the result of damage, but of a misaligned hubbing process during die creation, and unlike minor machine doubling which adds no value. True doubled dies are highly sought after, and when the doubling is bold, consistent, and verified by professional grading services, the value can skyrocket, especially if the coin is preserved in near-perfect condition. Another legendary mistake tied to extreme valuations is the off-metal or wrong planchet error, where a 1979 D penny was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or composition, such as a dime planchet, a foreign planchet, or even experimental alloy stock, and these coins immediately stand out because of their incorrect weight, thickness, color, and sometimes size. And when authenticated, they become unique artifacts of minting history, with some off-metal cents fetching staggering prices due to their rarity and the mystery surrounding how they escaped quality control. Equally fascinating are transitional errors and wrong composition strikes, especially given the era's experimentation with metals and mint processes, where a 1979 D cent struck on an unusual copper alloy or improperly mixed metal can exhibit strange coloration, density anomalies, and magnetic properties, all of which increase collector interest exponentially. Because collectors are not just buying a coin, they are buying a mistake that should never have left the mint. Then there are major strike errors such as broad strikes, where the coin was struck without a retaining collar causing it to spread outward unnaturally, or multiple strike errors where the coin was struck 2 or more times in misaligned positions, sometimes even rotated or flipped between strikes, creating surreal and visually stunning designs that look more like abstract art than money. And when such errors occur on a 1979 D penny with sharp detail and minimal wear, they become centerpieces of elite collections. Another critical possibility is the presence of a major die break or cut error, where a piece of the die literally broke away, leaving a raised blob of metal on the coin's surface, and in extreme cases these cuts can be massive, swallowing letters, dates, or even parts of Lincoln's portrait, making the coin instantly recognizable and incredibly rare, especially if the die break progressed over a short run before being discovered and replaced. Some of the most valuable examples are also associated with dramatic die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet between them, transferring ghostly impressions of one side onto the other, and when combined with other errors like doubling or off-center strikes, these clash marks add layers of rarity that collectors are willing to pay astonishing sums for. Condition plays an equally vital role in pushing prices into the millions, because even the rarest error loses value if it is heavily worn or damaged after leaving the mint, which is why the most valuable 1979 era pennies are typically found in uncirculated or near-perfect states, sometimes preserved by sheer luck in mint rolls, bank bags, or collections where their significance was not recognized at the time, and when such a coin is later discovered and professionally graded with a top-tier mint state rating, the market response can be explosive. The story behind the $19 million valuation is not just about metal and the stakes, but about demand, narrative, and uniqueness, because when a coin combines multiple rare errors, such as a double die obverse struck off-center on a wrong planchet with a major die break, it can become a one-of-a-kind specimen, and in numismatics, uniqueness is king, driving competitive bidding among wealthy collectors, museums, and private investors who want to own something that no one else can. Authentication is crucial in this process, because the market only recognizes value once a coin has been examined and certified by respected grading services, which analyze weight, composition, strike characteristics, and die markers to confirm that the errors are genuine mint errors and not post-mint damage, and once certified, the coin enters the global marketplace where its story can be told, documented, and amplified, sometimes leading to record-breaking private sales that fuel headlines and speculation. What makes the 1979 penny especially intriguing is that it sits in a time period many people still remember, meaning there is a real possibility that undiscovered examples are still hiding in jars, drawers, and old collections, waiting for someone to look closely enough to notice something strange, something slightly off, something that doesn't match a normal penny. And that possibility keeps collectors searching relentlessly. Even small anomalies like missing mint marks, filled mint marks, or repunched mint marks, when combined with other errors, can add to the overall rarity profile of a coin, especially if documentation shows that only a handful were produced before the error was corrected, and while on their own these might not reach millions, in combination they can elevate a coin into legendary status. The fascination with these coins is also psychological, because they represent the idea that life-changing value can hide in plain sight, that an object dismissed as worthless can actually be priceless under the right circumstances, and that idea resonates deeply with collectors and everyday people alike, fueling viral stories, intense auctions, and endless searches through spare change. The 1979 penny reminds us that the mint is a human-run system prone to error, and those errors, once frozen in metal, become historical documents of imperfection, telling stories of speed, pressure, oversight, and chance. And when those stories intersect with rarity, condition, and demand, the result can be astronomical value. So the next time you come across an old penny, especially one from 1979 with a D mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly, because within that small copper disc could be unusual weight, strange doubling, off-center alignment, or metal that simply doesn't belong, and any one of those signs could point to a coin that collectors would pay fortunes to own, proving once again that in the world of numismatics, even a single cent can be worth millions if it carries the right mistakes, the right story, and the rarest combination of possibilities. Next, 1962 no mint mark 1 cent USA coin, a penny that most people would glance at and instantly dismiss as common, yet under incredibly rare circumstances and because of a unique combination of minting errors, mistakes, historical context, condition, and collector demand, this humble Lincoln cent has been associated with valuations reaching an astonishing $26 million, making it one of the most fascinating examples of how rarity is not always about age but about what went wrong at the exact moment a coin was born. The 1962 no mint mark penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use mint marks during that era, and Philadelphia was producing enormous quantities of cents to keep up with America's booming economy, vending machines, and everyday cash transactions, meaning speed was prioritized, and whenever speed increases inside a mint, the likelihood of errors increases as well. Because dies wear faster, planchets slip, metal mixes vary slightly, and quality control can miss anomalies that only become obvious decades later under magnification. Most 1962 pennies are composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, weighing approximately 3.11 grams, and in normal circulated condition they are worth only a few cents above face value, but hidden within this massive production run are coins that should never have existed. Coins that slip through the system carrying mistakes so rare and so dramatic that they redefine what collectors are willing to pay. One of the most important error categories linked to extreme valuations is the double die obverse, a mistake that occurs during the die creation process when the hub impresses the design onto the die more than once in misaligned positions, resulting in true doubling that appears on the date, the word liberty, the motto "I in God we trust," and sometimes even Lincoln's facial features. And unlike machine doubling, which looks flat and shelf-like, true double die errors show rounded, clearly separated impressions that are highly prized, and when such doubling is bold, consistent, and verified, it immediately places the coin into elite territory. In the case of the 1962 no-mint mark penny, some extremely rare double die varieties are believed to exist with dramatic separation that was quickly corrected, meaning very few coins escaped into circulation. And when one of these is found in high mint state condition with original luster intact, the value multiplies exponentially, especially when collectors realize how few examples survive. Another critical factor that pushes this coin toward multimillion-dollar valuations is the possibility of a wrong planchet or off-metal strike, where a 1962 cent was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, such as a dime, or even on foreign or experimental planchets that were present at the mint for testing purposes, and these errors are immediately apparent when weighed, measured, or visually inspected, because the color, thickness, and sound of the coin are wrong. And such mistakes are among the rarest in all of numismatics, because they require multiple failures in the minting process to occur simultaneously. The early 1960s were also a period of subtle experimentation and transition within the mint, as rising copper prices and technological changes forced officials to explore different production efficiencies, and this environment increases the likelihood of alloy errors, where the metal mixture is incorrect, leading to cents that may be lighter, heavier, darker, or even slightly magnetic. Anomalies that fascinate collectors because they represent physical evidence of behind-the-scenes mint activity that was never meant to be public. Die break errors also play a major role in the story of the 1962 penny's extreme value, because as dies were pushed to their limits to keep up with demand, cracks formed, and in rare cases, chunks of the die broke away entirely, creating what collectors call cuds, raised blobs of metal that distort or obscure parts of the design. And when these cuds are large, dramatic, and occur on key areas like the date or Lincoln's portrait, they transform an ordinary penny into a unique artifact that exists in only a handful of examples. Even more visually striking are multiple strike errors, where a planchet fails to eject properly and is struck more than once, sometimes rotated or misaligned between strikes, producing ghostly overlapping images that look almost surreal. And when such an error occurs on a 1962 no-mint mark sent with minimal wear, the result is a coin that collectors will fight over, because it represents a frozen moment of mechanical failure captured forever in copper. Off-center strikes are another category that can dramatically boost value, especially when the date and major design elements remain visible while a significant portion of the coin is blank, and if such an off-center strike is combined with another error, like doubling or a die break, the rarity multiplies rather than adds, creating a compound error that is exponentially more desirable than any single mistake on its own. One of the most intriguing possibilities surrounding the $26 million valuation is the concept of uniqueness, because the highest prices in numismatics are often paid not for coins that are merely rare, but for coins that are one of a kind, and if a 1962 no-mint mark penny exists that combines multiple major errors, such as a dramatic double die obverse struck on a wrong planchet with a massive cut and preserved in near-perfect condition, it would represent something that cannot be replaced, replicated, or easily valued using traditional price guides, forcing collectors to compete purely on desire and prestige. Condition is absolutely critical in this discussion, because the difference between a worn example and a pristine one can mean millions of dollars, and the most valuable error coins are often those that somehow avoided circulation altogether, perhaps stored away in mint rolls, bank vaults, or forgotten collections where their surfaces remained untouched, retaining sharp details, full luster, and original color that grading services reward with top mint state designations. Professional authentication and grading are essential before any such valuation can be taken seriously, because the numismatic market relies on trust, and only coins that have been thoroughly examined by experts, weighed, tested for metal composition, and compared against known die markers are accepted as genuine mint errors rather than post-mint damage, and once certified, a coin's story becomes official, documented, and ready to enter the highest levels of the collector market. The role of demand cannot be overstated, because value is ultimately determined by what someone is willing to pay, and the Lincoln Cent series is one of the most widely collected coin series in the world, meaning there is a massive audience of collectors, investors, and institutions all competing for the rarest examples, and when a legendary error surfaces, the bidding can reach unimaginable heights, especially if wealthy collectors see it as a trophy piece that elevates their entire collection. The narrative surrounding the 1962 penny adds another layer of appeal, because it comes from an era that many people remember or feel connected to, making the idea that a life-changing coin could still be hiding in an old jar or drawer incredibly compelling, and this emotional connection fuels relentless searching, viral stories, and intense interest whenever a new discovery is rumored. Even subtle errors like repunch dates, die polishing lines, and filled letters, when combined with larger mistakes, contribute to the overall rarity profile of a coin, and while these minor errors alone might not command huge sums, in combination they help build the case for extraordinary value by showing that the die was in a state of chaos when the coin was struck. The fascination with the 1962 no-mint mark penny also lies in what it represents philosophically, the idea that perfection is not what creates value, but imperfection, that a mistake made decades ago by a machine or a worker rushing to meet quotas can echo through time and become a priceless artifact, and this idea resonates deeply with collectors and everyday people alike. Stories of pennies selling for millions are not just about money, they are about hope, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery, and the 1962 cent embodies all of that potential in a single piece of copper. When you consider the sheer volume of pennies produced that year, the odds that a few extraordinary mistakes slip through are not just possible, they are inevitable, and the fact that not all of them have been found keeps the dream alive for collectors everywhere. The $26 million figure attached to the most exceptional examples is not about a price tag written in stone, but about the upper limits of what rarity, condition, demand, and narrative can achieve when they converge perfectly. And history has shown again and again that when such a coin appears at auction or in a private sale, the final number can shock even seasoned experts. Next, 1982 no-mint mark 1 cent coin, a coin that at first glance looks completely ordinary, yet behind its familiar Lincoln design lies a perfect storm of historical transition, metal composition chaos, minting errors, and rare mistakes that have pushed some exceptional examples into valuation territory rumored as high as $16 million, making this penny one of the most talked about modern coins in numismatics. The year 1982 is legendary among coin collectors because it represents one of the most dramatic transitions in U.S. coinage history, the year the United States Mint officially shifted the cent from its traditional copper-based composition to a primarily zinc core with a thin copper plating, a decision driven by rising copper prices and economic pressure. And unlike most transitions that happen cleanly at the start of a year, the 1982 cent transition happened mid-year, resulting in multiple varieties, multiple weights, and multiple compositions all struck within the same calendar year, creating confusion not only for the public but even for the mint itself. The no-mint mark 1982 penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which at that time did not use a mint mark on cents, and Philadelphia was producing enormous quantities of pennies while simultaneously changing planchets, adjusting machinery, and managing both copper and zinc stocks, a situation that dramatically increased the likelihood of catastrophic errors slipping through unnoticed. In total, there are 7 recognized major varieties of the 1982 penny, differing in composition, weight, and even date style, and while most are common, a tiny fraction exist with combinations of errors so rare that they redefine what collectors consider possible in a modern coin. One of the most important factors behind the $16 million valuation is the existence of wrong composition errors, particularly 1982 no-mint mark pennies that were struck on the wrong metal planchets during the transition, including coins struck in full copper when they should have been zinc, or even more extraordinarily, coins struck on experimental, incomplete, or improperly alloyed planchets that do not match any standard specification, resulting in unusual weights, densities, and appearances that immediately set them apart from normal cents. These wrong planchet errors are incredibly rare because they require multiple failures in mint procedures, including incorrect planchet feeding, insufficient quality control, and successful release into circulation. And when such a coin is found and authenticated, it becomes a centerpiece of modern numismatics. Another major contributor to extreme value is the double die obverse error, where the die itself was improperly created during the hubbing process, causing strong and genuine doubling on the date, the word liberty, the motto I in God we trust, and sometimes Lincoln's facial features. And in the chaotic production environment of 1982, dies were being produced, replaced, and reused rapidly, increasing the chance of hubbing misalignment. And while minor doubling is common and worthless, true double die errors with clear separation are rare and highly prized, especially when combined with the correct or incorrect metal composition that adds another layer of rarity. The 1982 no-mint mark penny is also famous for its weight discrepancies, because copper cents weigh approximately 3.11 grams while zinc cents weigh about 2.5 grams, and any coin that does not match these weights precisely raises immediate red flags for collectors. And some of the most valuable examples are those that fall outside both ranges, suggesting experimental alloys, improperly mixed metals, or incomplete plating, all of which represent mistakes that were never meant to leave the mint. Plating errors are another critical element in the story of the $16 million penny, because zinc cents rely on a thin copper coating to protect the core, and when this plating process fails, the result can be dramatic, including missing plating, blistered surfaces, exposed zinc cores, or uneven coloration. And while minor plating issues are relatively common, extreme examples with large exposed areas, combined with other errors, can be exceptionally rare and valuable. Die break and cut errors also appear prominently among valuable 1982 cents, as dies were pushed hard during peak production, leading to cracks and fractures, and in severe cases, large pieces of the die broke away entirely, leaving raised blobs of metal that distort or obliterate parts of the design. And when such a cut appears near the date or Lincoln's portrait on a no-mint marked 1982 penny, it transforms the coin into a dramatic visual record of mechanical failure that collectors find irresistible. Off-center strikes further add to the list of high-value possibilities, especially when the date remains visible while a significant portion of the coin is blank. And if such an off-center strike occurs on a wrong composition planchet or with a doubled die, the rarity multiplies exponentially rather than incrementally, creating what collectors call a compound error. And compound errors are where valuations can escalate into the millions because they represent multiple independent mistakes occurring simultaneously. Multiple strike errors are equally fascinating, where a planchet failed to eject and was struck 2 or more times, sometimes rotated or misaligned between strikes, creating overlapping images that look almost surreal. And in the context of 1982's chaotic production environment, such errors are not impossible, but finding one preserved in high mint state condition is extraordinarily unlikely. And that improbability is exactly what drives massive value. Condition plays a decisive role in pushing prices toward $16 million, because even the rarest error loses much of its appeal if it is heavily worn, corroded, or damaged, and the most valuable 1982 era pennies are those that somehow escaped circulation entirely, perhaps stored in mint rolls, bank bags, or private collections where their surfaces remained untouched, preserving sharp details, original luster, and clean fields that grading services reward with top mint state designations. Authentication is absolutely essential, because the 1982 penny is one of the most heavily scrutinized coins in the Lincoln cent series due to the prevalence of altered coins, copper-plated zinc cents modified to appear copper, and damaged coins passed off as errors. and only coins examined by reputable grading services using precise weight measurements, metallurgical testing, and die marker analysis are accepted as genuine mint errors worthy of extraordinary valuations. The $16 million figure associated with the most exceptional 1982 no-mint mark pennies is not about a single known coin with a public price tag, but about the theoretical upper limit of what a unique, or near-unique specimen could achieve if it combined multiple major errors, pristine condition, and verified authenticity, and history has shown that when such a coin surfaces, the market can react explosively, especially when wealthy collectors view it as a trophy piece that elevates their entire collection. Demand plays an enormous role here, because the Lincoln cent is the most widely collected U.S. coin series in the world, meaning that any legendary error attracts not just a handful of specialists, but thousands of collectors, investors, and institutions, all competing for ownership, and when demand collides with extreme rarity, price becomes almost irrelevant. The psychological appeal of the 1982 penny cannot be overstated, because it represents the idea that a modern coin, something many people still remember using, can be worth a fortune, and that idea fuels endless searching through jars, drawers, and inherited collections, keeping the legend alive and the hunt ongoing. Even subtle details like date-style differences, die polishing lines, and filled letters can add to the overall rarity profile of a coin, especially when combined with larger errors, and while these minor anomalies alone might not command huge sums, they help tell the story of a die under stress, a process breaking down, and a coin born in chaos. The fascination with the 1982 no-mint mark penny ultimately lies in what it symbolizes, a moment when economic pressure, technological change, and human imperfection collided, leaving behind physical evidence in copper and zinc that collectors can hold in their hands, and when that evidence takes the form of a coin that should never have existed, preserved in extraordinary condition, it becomes more than money, it becomes history. Stories of pennies worth millions are not just about profit, they are about possibility, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery, and the 1982 cent embodies that spirit perfectly, reminding us that value is often hidden in the most ordinary places. When you consider how many billions of pennies were produced, the fact that a few extraordinary mistakes slipped through is not surprising, but the fact that some may still be undiscovered is what keeps collectors searching relentlessly. The $16 million valuation represents the ultimate convergence of rarity, condition, demand, and narrative, a point where traditional price guides no longer apply and the coin becomes whatever the highest bidder believes it is worth. Next, 1980 no-mint mark 1 cent USA coin, a penny that most people have spent without a second thought, yet under extraordinarily rare circumstances and because of a powerful combination of minting errors, production mistakes, historical context, and collector demand, has been linked to valuations reaching as high as $17 million. Proving once again that value in coin collecting is not about age alone, but about what went wrong at exactly the right moment. The 1980 no-mint mark penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a period of intense production pressure, as the U.S. Mint was pushing out massive quantities of cents to satisfy daily circulation needs, and when production volume rises, quality control is strained, dies wear faster, planchets move at high speed, and the chances of serious errors slipping through increase dramatically. At this time, the Lincoln cent was still being struck in its traditional copper-based alloy of 95% copper with zinc and tin, weighing approximately 3.11 grams, a composition that would soon be phased out just 2 years later, making 1980 one of the last full years of classic copper cents, and this fact alone adds historical importance. Because collectors strongly favor pre-1982 copper cents, especially when they carry unusual characteristics. Most 1980 no-mint mark pennies are common and worth only a small premium in uncirculated condition, but hidden within the enormous production totals are coins that should never have existed, coins that escaped the mint carrying errors so dramatic and so rare that they elevate an otherwise ordinary penny into legendary territory. One of the most important contributors to extreme valuations is the double die obverse error, a mistake created during the die hubbing process when the design is impressed onto the die more than once in misaligned positions, producing true doubling that appears on the date, the word liberty, the motto "I in God we trust," and sometimes even Lincoln's eye, nose, and beard, and unlike machine doubling, which is flat and worthless, genuine doubled dies show rounded, clearly separated impressions that are highly prized, and when such doubling is bold and consistent across the design, it can turn a common coin into a numismatic treasure. In the case of the 1980 no-mint mark penny, some extremely rare doubled die varieties are believed to exist that were corrected quickly, meaning very few examples entered circulation, and when one of these is found in high mint state condition with original red luster intact, the value increases exponentially because it combines rarity with pristine preservation. Another major pathway to multimillion-dollar valuation is the presence of off-metal or wrong planchet errors, where a 1980 cent was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, such as a dime, or on a foreign planchet that happened to be in the press at the same time, and these errors are among the rarest in all of U.S. coinage because they require multiple failures in the minting process, including incorrect planchet feeding, lack of detection and release into circulation, and when authenticated, they become unique physical evidence of minting chaos. The late 1970s and early 1980s were also a time of increasing economic pressure on the mint due to metal price volatility, and although the official composition change did not happen until 1982, experimentation and logistical overlap can lead to alloy anomalies, where the metal mixture is slightly incorrect, resulting in cents that weigh too much, too little, or display unusual coloration, density, or surface texture, all of which fascinate collectors because they suggest behind-the-scenes activity that was never intended to leave the mint. Die break and cut errors are another powerful factor in the story of the $17,001,980 penny, because dies used in high-volume production eventually crack and fracture, and when pieces of the die break away completely, they leave raised blobs of metal on the coin's surface that can swallow letters, dates, or even large portions of Lincoln's portrait, and when these cuts are large, dramatic, and clearly defined, they create coins that are instantly recognizable and extremely rare. Especially if the die was replaced quickly and only a few coins were struck in that state. Off-center strikes add another layer of desirability, particularly when the date and major design elements remain visible while a significant portion of the coin is blank, and if such an off-center strike is combined with another error like a doubled die or die break, the rarity multiplies rather than adds, creating what collectors call a compound error. And compound errors are where values can escalate into the millions because they represent multiple independent failures occurring on a single coin. Multiple strike errors are equally captivating, where a planchet fails to eject properly and is struck 2 or more times, sometimes rotated or shifted between strikes, creating overlapping images that look almost surreal, and when such an error occurs on a 1980 no-mint mark penny with minimal wear, it becomes a visual masterpiece of mechanical failure that elite collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums to own. Another fascinating possibility involves broad strikes, where the coin was struck without a retaining collar, causing it to spread outward and appear larger and thinner than normal, and while minor broad strikes are relatively common, extreme examples with well-defined detail and additional errors can be incredibly rare and valuable. Condition plays a decisive role in pushing prices towards $17 million, because even the rarest error loses much of its appeal if it is heavily worn, scratched, or damaged, and the most valuable examples are those that somehow avoided circulation altogether, perhaps stored in mint rolls, bank bags, or forgotten collections, preserving sharp details, clean fields, an original luster that grading services reward with top mint state ratings. Professional authentication is absolutely essential before any such valuation can be considered legitimate, because the numismatic market relies on trust, and only coins examined by respected grading services using precise weight measurements, metallurgical analysis, and die marker comparison are accepted as genuine mint errors rather than post-mint damage, and once certified, a coin's story becomes official, documented, and ready to enter the highest levels of the collector market. The $17 million figure associated with the most exceptional 1980 no-mint mark pennies is not about an everyday price guide listing, but about the theoretical upper limit of what a unique, or near-unique specimen could achieve if it combined multiple major errors, pristine condition, and verified authenticity, and history has shown that when such coins appear at auction or in private sales, the results can shock even seasoned experts. Demand plays a massive role in this equation, because the Lincoln cent is the most widely collected coin series in the world, meaning there is a huge audience of collectors, investors, and institutions competing for the rarest examples, and when demand collides with extreme rarity, price becomes whatever the highest bidder is willing to pay. The psychological appeal of the 1980 penny cannot be overstated, because it represents the idea that a relatively modern coin, something many people still remember using as children, can be worth a fortune, and that idea fuels endless searching through jars, drawers, and inherited collections, keeping the legend alive and the hunt ongoing. Even subtle anomalies like repunched dates, filled letters, and unusual die polishing lines can add to the overall rarity profile of a coin, especially when combined with larger errors, helping to tell the story of a die under stress and a mint operating at full speed. The fascination with the 1980 no-mint mark penny ultimately lies in what it symbolizes: the idea that imperfection creates value, that a small mistake made decades ago can echo through time and become a priceless artifact, and that hidden treasures can exist in the most ordinary places. Stories of pennies worth millions are not just about money, they are about curiosity, hope, and the thrill of discovery, and the 1980 cent embodies all of that potential in a single copper disc. When you consider how many billions of pennies were produced, the fact that a few extraordinary mistakes slipped through is not surprising, but the fact that some may still be undiscovered is what keeps collectors searching relentlessly. The $17 million valuation represents the ultimate convergence of rarity, condition, demand, and narrative, a point where traditional price guides no longer apply and the coin becomes whatever the market believes it is worth. So the next time you see a 1980 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly, weigh it, examine it closely, look for doubling, off-center strikes, strange surfaces, or raised blobs of metal, because within that small piece of copper could be a mistake frozen in time, a silent witness to the pressures of mass production, and possibly a treasure worth far more than anyone ever imagined. Proving once again that in the world of numismatics, even a single cent can change a life forever.